The Ashen Key War, Part 4. Chapter 18, The Hunt for the Black Viper. London, Southwark, March 8, 5:30 a.m. The streets of Southwark were drowning in fog. The gas lamps flickered weakly, their glow barely piercing the dense mist that clung to the cobblestones. This part of the city was a different world from the grand streets of Mayfair or the polished halls of Parliament. It was darker. Harsher. A place of ghosts and whispers. And tonight, it was where Alistair Graves would find the deadliest assassin in London. The Black Viper. Graves moved with purpose, his coat swirling in the wind as he approached the rendezvous point. An old abandoned clockmaker's shop on Millbank Street. It was a forgotten ruin, the once proud storefront now a relic of a city that had left it behind. The wooden sign above the door swayed in the wind, its lettering long faded. Inside, the air smelled of dust, oil, and secrets. And waiting for him were three familiar figures. Eleanor Blackwood. Ezra Renwick. Matthias Drake. All three were standing near the workbench, their expressions grim. Ezra smirked. "Took you long enough, Graves." Graves ignored him. His sharp gaze swept the room. "What did you find?" Matthias stepped forward, tossing a blood-stained handkerchief onto the worktable. "Confirmation." Graves raised an eyebrow. "Mercer." Matthias nodded. "He's here." Ezra sighed. "And he's expecting us." Eleanor moved toward the back of the shop, where a large iron trapdoor was built into the floor. She tapped her boot against it. "Leads underground." Graves knelt, pressing his palm against the rusted metal. It was cold. Old. Worn smooth by years of use. Jonathan's voice echoed in his mind, "Why is it always secret basements?" Graves exhaled. "He's below us." Matthias crossed his arms. "That's the problem." Ezra tilted his head. "What, exactly, are we walking into?" Matthias' expression was unreadable. A death trap. Beneath the clockmaker's shop, 5:45 a.m. The trapdoor creaked as Graves pushed it open. A ladder led downward, disappearing into absolute darkness. The air that rose from below was cold, thick with the scent of damp stone and machine oil. Eleanor adjusted her grip on her dagger. "I don't like this." Ezra exhaled. "I love this." Graves smirked. Stay close." One by one, they descended. The wooden rungs of the ladder were slick with moisture, the darkness swallowing them whole as they entered the viper's den. The underground space was a workshop. An intricate labyrinth of gears, blueprints, and unfinished machines. Strange clockwork devices lay in various states of completion, their designs bizarre, almost unnatural. Eleanor touched a half-assembled contraption. What the hell was he building? Matthias' voice was grim. "Tools of murder." Graves studied the blueprints scattered across the worktables. Then, his stomach twisted. Because one blueprint stood out. A detailed floor plan of Buckingham Palace. A soft click echoed through the chamber. They all froze. A whisper of movement in the shadows. Then, a figure emerged from the darkness. Tall. Lean. Draped in black. A long coat swept the floor as he stepped into the dim light. His face was gaunt, his features sharp as a blade. And his eyes, dark, calculating, locked onto Graves. Ezra muttered, "Well. That's unsettling." Silas Mercer. The Black Viper. Graves exhaled. Silas. The assassin smiled. Graves. A blade flashed. The viper moved first, fast as a striking serpent. Graves barely dodged as the knife slashed past his throat. Eleanor lunged, dagger clashing against Mercer's blade. Sparks flew in the dim light. Ezra fired a shot, but Mercer twisted, using the gears as cover. Matthias moved to flank him, but the Viper was faster. A well-placed kick sent Matthias sprawling. Graves rolled aside, pulling his revolver. The Viper disappeared into the darkness. A whisper. Still as slow as ever, Graves. Graves smirked. And you still talk too much. Mercer lunged from the shadows. But Graves had already predicted the movement. At the last second, he sidestepped, grabbed Mercer's wrist, and slammed him into the nearest table. The assassin snarled, but Graves pressed his gun to his temple. Enough. Eleanor and Ezra stood ready, weapons drawn. Matthias wiped blood from his mouth. Mercer laughed. Well done, Graves. You finally caught me. Graves' grip tightened. Give me one reason not to end this now. Mercer smiled. And then, he whispered the last thing Graves expected. Because you need me. Eleanor stiffened. We need you. Mercer smirked. Yes. Graves' jaw tightened. Explain. The Black Viper exhaled. Then, he spoke. I'm not just here to kill the Queen. A pause. I'm here to kill the Crimson Lord. A dead silence. Jonathan's voice echoed in Graves' head. Nothing ever stays buried in this damn city. Graves' eyes narrowed. What are you saying, Mercer? The assassin smiled. I'm saying. I never stopped working for you. Ezra muttered, oh, hell. Eleanor's dagger remained raised. Matthias watched Mercer carefully. Graves tilted his head. You expect me to trust you? Mercer smirked. No. I expect you to use me. A beat of silence. Then, Graves smiled. Then let's make a deal. Chapter 19, The Black Viper's Offer, Betrayal or Redemption. London, beneath the clockmaker's shop, March 8, 6 a.m. The underground chamber was thick with tension. Silas Mercer, the Black Viper, the deadliest assassin in London, was trapped. Or at least, he appeared to be. Pinned against the workbench, Graves' revolver pressed to his temple, Eleanor's dagger hovered near his throat, and Matthias stood ready to strike. Ezra, leaning casually against the wall, watched with the sharp eyes of a man who knew chaos was about to unfold. But Mercer? He smirked. Go on, Graves. His voice was smooth, calm. Kill me. You've been waiting years for this. Graves didn't flinch. Give me a reason not to. Mercer chuckled. Because you need me. A pause. Because I am your only way inside Buckingham Palace. Eleanor's grip on her dagger tightened. You expect us to believe that? Mercer tilted his head, amusement flickering in his dark eyes. Not believe. Accept. Matthias growled. You're a killer. A society dog. Why the hell would we work with you? Mercer's smirk didn't fade. Because I want the Crimson Lord dead just as much as you do. Silence. Ezra exhaled slowly. Well. That's a plot twist. Jonathan's voice echoed in Graves' head, nothing ever stays buried in this damn city. Graves studied Mercer carefully. Why? Mercer exhaled. And for the first time, his smirk faded. Because. The Crimson Lord is planning something worse than assassination. A pause. He's planning a purge. Graves lowered his gun slightly. Explain. Mercer licked his lips, his sharp mind calculating how much to reveal, then, he spoke. The assassinations? They're a distraction. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. A distraction from what? Mercer's voice was low. From the real coup. A pause. From what happens after the Queen is dead. Graves. Stomach twisted. Go on. Mercer exhaled. The Society doesn't just want to kill the Queen. They want to burn the city down. Ezra muttered, "Oh, bloody hell." Eleanor took a sharp breath. You're saying they're planning more than assassinations? Mercer nodded. They've already arranged it. Fires in the East End, explosives set in the underground tunnels, key supply routes cut. By the time the city realizes the monarchy is gone, they'll already be starving and in chaos. Matthias clenched his jaw. That means, Graves finished for him. They're not just toppling the crown. They're dismantling London itself. A heavy silence fell. Ezra sighed. Why? Is it always fire? Graves turned back to Mercer. And you're telling me you want to stop this? Mercer nodded. Yes. Ezra arched an eyebrow. Forgive me if I find that difficult to believe. Mercer's expression darkened. The Society tried to have me killed. Eleanor stilled. What? Mercer's lips curved bitterly. Did you really think I still worked for them? I was their weapon. But the moment I became a liability, they turned on me. Matthias scoffed. You expect sympathy? Mercer smirked. No. I expect you to use me. He leaned forward slightly. I have everything you need. I know the palace's security inside and out. I know the Society's last orders. And I know how to get you inside. Graves studied him. Mercer studied him back. Neither blinked. Then, Graves finally lowered his gun. Then we make a deal. Eleanor tensed. Graves, he ignored her. You help us stop this. You get us inside. You take us to the Crimson Lord. His gray eyes turned cold. And when this is over, we settle our score. Mercer smirked. Oh, Graves. I wouldn't have it any other way. Ezra sighed. Well. This is certainly a bad idea. Graves glanced at Mercer one last time. Then let's get to work. Mercer exhaled. We have less than 48 hours. Eleanor crossed her arms. Then we better move fast. Graves smiled. Then let's steal a throne. Chapter 20, The Heist at Buckingham Palace. London, March 9th, 11:30 p.m. The city was on edge. The Queen's coronation banquet, an annual display of wealth, power, and tradition, was set to begin in less than 24 hours. The grand halls of Buckingham Palace would be filled with the most powerful figures in the empire, ministers, generals, industrial tycoons, and foreign dignitaries. And among them, the Black Viper. Waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But before that could happen, Alistair Graves and his team had to get inside. This wasn't a mere infiltration. This was a heist against the crown itself. And the fate of London depended on it. An underground safe house, March 9th, 11:45 p.m. The room was filled with tension. A massive blueprint of Buckingham Palace lay spread across the table, illuminated by the flickering glow of an oil lamp. Graves stood at the center, arms crossed, eyes sharp as steel. Eleanor Blackwood sat across from him, her dagger spinning idly between her fingers. Ezra Renwick leaned against the wall, twirling a gold coin between his fingers. Jonathan Whitmore, despite his usual protests, was fully engaged, frowning at the logistics of their insane plan. And Silas Mercer, the Black Viper himself, stood near the doorway, watching with a smirk. Matthias Drake, ever watchful, kept a hand on his pistol. Let's go over it one last time, Graves said, voice even, precise. Ezra chuckled. We break into the most heavily guarded building in England. Easy. Eleanor ignored him. We have 3 ways in, she said, tapping the blueprint. 1. Disguises. We forge credentials and enter as staff or guests. Risky, since Thorne and others might recognize us. 2. The tunnels. There's an old servant's passage that runs beneath the palace, but it was sealed years ago. 3. The rooftops. Dangerous, but we could scale the east wing and enter through the balcony. Jonathan sighed. I assume not breaking in isn't an option. Graves smirked. Not if we want to stop a massacre. Buckingham Palace, March 10, 1:30 a.m. The streets surrounding Buckingham Palace were crawling with guards. Gas lamps burned brightly along the outer gates, and patrols moved in rotating shifts, each man trained to spot a threat before it could manifest. But even the best defenses had weaknesses. And tonight, Graves and his team would exploit them all. Eleanor and Ezra moved first, disguised as members of the palace staff. Ezra, ever the master of deception, had managed to forge 2 sets of credentials, allowing them access through the service entrance. Meanwhile, Graves and Matthias took the tunnel route. And Mercer? He had his own way in. Because the Black Viper never used doors. Underground tunnels, beneath Buckingham Palace, 1:45 a.m. The servants' passage had been built nearly a century prior, designed to allow the palace's lowest-ranking staff to move unseen. It had since been abandoned, but Graves had paid well for the knowledge that it still existed. Matthias led the way, his lantern casting eerie shadows against the damp stone walls. This better not collapse on us, he muttered. Graves smirked. You worry too much. Matthias snorted. You die too much. They moved swiftly, stepping over loose bricks and half-rotted beams. And when they reached the hidden hatch beneath the palace, Graves pressed his ear to the wood. Silence. Clear. He pressed upward. And the 2 men emerged inside the palace. Buckingham Palace, 2:15 a.m. Eleanor and Ezra were already inside. Dressed as staff, they moved through the grand corridors with an air of calculated purpose. They had managed to obtain a master key, allowing them to access the restricted wings. Jonathan, meanwhile, had entered through a different route, disguised as a medical advisor for the foreign delegates. As for Mercer, he had disappeared into the rafters. Waiting. Watching. His own game already in motion. Grand Staircase, 2:30 a.m. Graves and Matthias had just entered the east wing when they encountered their first problem. Lucien Thorne. Standing at the top of the grand staircase, hands resting on his cane, watching them with the amusement of a man who knew exactly what was happening. I was wondering when you'd arrive, Graves. Graves exhaled sharply. Thorne. Matthias whispered, this is bad. Thorne smirked. You didn't think we were unprepared, did you? The guards flanking the staircase immediately stepped forward. Eleanor's voice whispered into Graves' ear through the hidden communication device. Change of plan. We need an exit. Now. Graves tightened his jaw. We're making one. Thorne barely had time to react before Graves moved. A dagger flew from his sleeve, slicing the nearest guard's arm. Matthias fired a shot, hitting the second guard in the shoulder. The grand hallway erupted into chaos. Thorne stepped back, smirking. Still predictable, Graves. Graves grinned. Then stop falling for it. He grabbed Matthias and barreled down the nearest corridor, weaving through the ornate hallways of the palace. The guards pursued them, their footsteps echoing against the marble floors. Eleanor's voice rang in his ear. Graves, you're running straight toward the ballroom. Graves smirked. Perfect. Buckingham Palace, Grand Ballroom, 2:45 a.m. The grand chandeliers cast a golden glow over the ballroom. The banquet tables were already being set, polished silver, crystal glasses, floral arrangements. And at the center of the room, a massive crystal chandelier hanging from an intricate pulley system. Graves didn't hesitate. As the guards burst through the entrance, he grabbed the nearest rope and pulled. The chandelier came crashing down. Glass exploded, and the room filled with smoke. In the confusion, Graves and Matthias vanished. Eleanor and Ezra regrouped in the west corridor. Jonathan secured their medical access pass. And Mercer? Somewhere in the shadows above, he watched the chaos unfold. Graves caught his breath. They were inside. They had made it to the banquet. But tomorrow night, the real test began. Because as soon as the Queen entered the ballroom, the Black Viper would make his move. And they had one night to stop him. Chapter 21, The Night of Assassins, the banquet begins. London, Buckingham Palace, March 10, 7 p.m. The grand hallways of Buckingham Palace were alive with splendor. Golden chandeliers bathed the marble floors in warm light, casting reflections against the towering columns that stretched toward the domed ceiling. The scent of fine wines, roasted meats, and burning candle wax filled the air as London's most powerful figures gathered for the Queen's coronation banquet. Ministers, military officials, and nobles, all dressed in their finest attire, moved in polished elegance, speaking in hushed conversations about the empire, trade agreements, and whispered rumors of unrest. But hidden among them, lurking in the shadows, were assassins. And among those assassins, the Black Viper. Waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Servants' Corridor, 7:15 p.m. Alistair Graves adjusted the gold-embroidered cuffs of his stolen uniform. He stood in a hidden alcove behind the banquet hall, listening as the murmuring voices of England's elite drifted through the grand doors. From this position, he could see everything. Eleanor Blackwood moved gracefully across the ballroom floor, her deep emerald gown blending seamlessly with the nobility. A dagger, hidden in the folds of her silk skirts, was within easy reach. Ezra Renwick, ever the opportunist, played the role of a wealthy investor, sipping wine near the foreign delegates while subtly scanning the crowd. Matthias Drake had stationed himself near the guard posts, disguised as one of the palace's security officers. Jonathan Whitmore stood near the medical wing, prepared for either an assassination attempt or a bloody confrontation. And Silas Mercer, the Black Viper himself? He was out there. Hunting. Waiting. But for who? The Grand Ballroom, 7:30 p.m. The entire hall fell silent. Then, the trumpets sounded. The ornate doors at the far end of the ballroom swung open, and the royal guard stepped forward. Their red and gold uniforms gleamed under the candlelight, their ceremonial swords shining in the glow of the chandeliers. And behind them, Queen Victoria, the Queen of the British Empire. Dressed in a flowing white gown trimmed with gold embroidery, the weight of the monarchy sat upon her shoulders with the grace of someone who had ruled for over 20 years. Her crown gleamed, her expression poised and unreadable. But Graves could see it, the hint of exhaustion in her eyes. The way her gloved fingers curled slightly, as if bracing for something unseen. The Queen took her place at the head of the grand banquet table. A moment of stillness. Then, the hall erupted in applause. The banquet had begun. And somewhere in this room, the Black Viper was preparing to kill. The upper balcony, 7:45 p.m. Graves' fingers brushed against the hilt of his hidden dagger. He wasn't alone up here. The upper balcony overlooked the entire banquet hall, offering a clear line of sight to the Queen's seat. It was the perfect place for a sniper. The perfect place for an assassin. And yet, it was empty. A bad feeling twisted in his gut. "Something's wrong," he whispered into his communication device. Eleanor's voice came through instantly. "I don't see Mercer. He hasn't made a move." Jonathan muttered, "That doesn't mean he isn't here." Matthias' voice was grim. "What if the Viper isn't the one taking the shot?" Graves froze. Because suddenly, it all made sense. The grand banquet table, 7:50 p.m. Graves scanned the room below, his sharp eyes flicking across the crowd. Mercer had been trained to work alone. To be silent. Precise. Deadly. Which meant, if he wasn't in position to take the shot, someone else was. "We've been looking for the wrong assassin." Eleanor's voice sharpened. "What do you mean?" "Mercer isn't here to kill the Queen." A pause. "He's here to protect her." The Queen's right hand, 7:55 p.m. Graves' eyes locked onto a single figure at the Queen's banquet table. Lord William Radcliffe. A trusted member of the Queen's inner circle. An advisor to the Crown. A man whispered to have deep connections to the Ashen Key Society. And at this moment, his hand was slowly reaching towards something hidden beneath his ceremonial robes. A dagger. A poisoned blade. Graves moved. Eleanor's voice rang in his ear. "Graves, what are you doing?" "Stopping a coup." The Queen's banquet table, 8 p.m. Graves vaulted over the upper balcony railing, landing hard on the marble floor below. Gasps erupted around the room. Guards rushed forward, startled by the sudden movement. And at that exact moment, Radcliffe struck. The dagger flashed toward the Queen's throat. But before it could land, another blade intercepted it. A black-gloved hand shot forward, twisting Radcliffe's wrist. Silas Mercer. The Black Viper had appeared from nowhere, driving his own dagger into Radcliffe's arm. The noble screamed, the blade clattering onto the table. Eleanor lunged forward, slamming Radcliffe's head against the polished wood. Guards seized him immediately. The entire hall fell into stunned silence. And in the middle of it all, the Queen remained untouched. Buckingham Palace, 8:15 p.m. Radcliffe was dragged away, his face pale with rage. The Queen, now fully composed, turned to her guards. "I want him interrogated. Immediately." Silas Mercer exhaled, stepping back into the shadows. Graves locked eyes with him. The Viper smirked. "Told you I wasn't the one you needed to stop." Ezra chuckled. "Well. That was dramatic." Jonathan groaned. "I need a drink." Eleanor shook her head. "This isn't over." Graves nodded. "No. Because the Crimson Lord is still out there. And now, he would know they had won this battle. But the war for London? It was far from over. Chapter 22, The Crimson Lord's Last Stand. London, the shadowed heart of the Ashen Key Society, March 10, 11:45 p.m. The storm had been building all night. Thunder rumbled over the rooftops of London, its low growl echoing across the Thames like the warning of something inevitable. Rain drummed against cobblestone streets, washing away the filth of the city's back alleys, but not its sins. Somewhere deep within the labyrinth of twisting corridors and secret chambers, the last remnants of the Ashen Key Society had gathered. And at their center, the Crimson Lord. Waiting. Watching. And preparing for the final confrontation. Underground Safe House, March 11, 12 a.m. The room was thick with tension. Graves sat at the head of the wooden table, his fingers drumming against the grain as he studied the final map laid out before him. Eleanor Blackwood stood near the fireplace, her arms crossed, the dim light flickering over the edge of her dagger. Ezra Renwick leaned back against the wall, flipping a coin between his fingers. Jonathan Whitmore, still shaken from the events at Buckingham Palace, stood stiffly near the door, watching. And Silas Mercer, the Black Viper himself, smirked from the shadows, his black-gloved fingers idly tracing the edge of his own blade. Matthias Drake was the first to break the silence. So. We've stopped the assassination. We've dismantled half of the Society's network. But the Crimson Lord? He's still standing. Eleanor nodded. And as long as he's alive, this isn't over. Graves exhaled. That's why tonight, we end it. A pause. For good. Location, the Society's hidden fortress, the Devil's Hollow. The Crimson Lord's final stronghold lay hidden in one of the oldest, most treacherous places in London. A forgotten underground chamber, carved deep into the foundations of the city itself. Known only as the Devil's Hollow, it had once been a part of an ancient crypt, long abandoned by history. Now, it was a sanctuary for the damned. A place where the Society's most dangerous operatives gathered, waiting for their master's next command. And tonight, it was where the Crimson Lord would make his last stand. Beneath London, the entrance to the Devil's Hollow, March 11, 12:45 a.m. The air was thick with damp earth and decay. A single iron door, marked with the Society's sigil, stood before them. Graves turned to Mercer. Is this the only way in? Mercer smirked. It's the only way alive. Ezra chuckled. That's comforting. Jonathan exhaled. And the guards? Mercer tilted his head. About a dozen on rotation. Armed, but predictable. If we move fast, they won't have time to react. Eleanor nodded. Then we go in fast and quiet. Matthias unsheathed his blade. And if it gets loud? Graves smiled. Then we burn them down. Inside the Devil's Hollow, March 11, 1 a.m. The first kill was silent. Eleanor's dagger slid across the guard's throat, his body collapsing before he could raise an alarm. The second was less clean. Matthias drove his blade through another enforcer's ribs, catching the man before he could crumple against the stone floor. Ezra, grinning, whispered, 5 more ahead. You take left, I take right. Graves smirked. Try to keep up. Then, they struck. The corridor erupted into chaos. Gunfire flashed in the dark. Blades clashed against steel. Graves moved like a shadow, his dagger finding soft flesh and exposed throats. Eleanor fought with lethal precision, weaving between enemies, her dagger cutting through fabric, muscle, and bone. Ezra moved like a ghost, dodging bullets with a gambler's grace, his revolver firing with unerring accuracy. Jonathan, though out of place in this world of assassins, fought with sheer desperation, his pistol shaking, but his aim true. And Mercer? The Black Viper was death itself. He moved faster than the eye could follow, twisting, striking, vanishing, his dagger spilling crimson across the stone. Within minutes, the guards were dead. The path was clear. And the door to the Crimson Lord's final chamber stood before them. The Crimson Lord's chamber, March 11, 1:30 a.m. The room was vast and echoing, lined with towering stone pillars. Torches burned along the walls, casting flickering shadows over a grand throne of black iron. And upon it, the Crimson Lord. Waiting. Watching. His face hidden behind a silver mask, his golden robes draped like the shroud of a king. A soft clap echoed through the chamber. Well done, Graves. His voice was low. Cold. Amused. You made it this far. Impressive. Graves took a slow step forward. It ends tonight. The Crimson Lord chuckled. Does it? Then, he rose. And from the shadows of the chamber, figures began to emerge. The last of the Ashen Key Society. Loyalists. Killers. Fanatics. Armed. Ready. and prepared to die for their master. Graves exhaled. So be it. The room exploded into violence. Graves moved first, his dagger flashing as he drove it into the first attacker's ribs. Eleanor fought like a storm, weaving through the enemy, spinning, cutting, striking. Ezra laughed as he fired his revolver, spinning behind cover, dodging blades and bullets alike. Jonathan fought desperately, but did not fall. And Mercer? He was a blur of death, his blade a whisper of silver as it cut down all who stood before him. But through it all, the Crimson Lord did not move. He simply watched. Waiting. Then, Graves turned toward him. And the final battle truly began. Graves and the Crimson Lord circled each other. Two men who had once shared the same path. Now, only one would leave this room alive. The first strike was brutal. The second, even worse. Dagger against dagger. Blood against blood. And in the end, Graves' blade found its mark. The Crimson Lord staggered. He collapsed to his knees. And with his final breath, he whispered, "You think you've won?" Then, he fell. Dead. By the time the battle ended, the society was no more. The city was safe. The monarchy still stood. But as Graves looked over the bodies, the ruins, the ashes of a war fought in the shadows, he knew. This was only the beginning. Epilogue, The Shadows That Remain. London, March 12, 3 a.m. The storm had passed. The city lay in silence, save for the occasional distant echo of carriage wheels rolling over cobblestone streets. Buckingham Palace still stood. The Queen still ruled. But the underbelly of London? It was forever changed. The Ashen Key Society had fallen. Its leaders lay dead, its influence scattered, its schemes unraveled. But something about it all felt hollow. Because Alistair Graves knew one terrible truth. You can kill a man. You cannot kill an idea. And the seeds of treachery had already been planted elsewhere. A hidden safe house, March 12, 3:30 a.m. The fire crackled softly in the hearth, casting flickering shadows along the stone walls. Graves sat in the worn leather chair, his coat draped over the armrest, a glass of whiskey in his hand. His body ached, but he ignored it. Across from him, Eleanor Blackwood leaned against the window, watching the city. It should feel like a victory. Graves took a slow sip of whiskey. It should. Eleanor's fingers drummed against the windowsill. And yet? Graves sighed. And yet, it doesn't. The team had scattered after the battle. Ezra Renwick had vanished into the night, already returning to his life of gambling, smuggling, and reckless survival. Matthias Drake had disappeared without a word, where he went, only he knew. Jonathan Whitmore, after much complaining, had sworn off this madness. Graves gave it a week. And Silas Mercer, the Black Viper himself? He had left Graves with one final promise. One day, Graves. I will collect what I am owed. Then. He was gone. Just like that. Eleanor turned back from the window. And what about Thorne? Graves didn't answer immediately. Because Lucien Thorne had vanished. No body. No sign of a struggle. Just, gone. And that was what bothered Graves most. Because Thorne was not a man to die in the dark. No, if Thorne was alive, then this was far from over. Eleanor exhaled. He's out there, isn't he? Graves set down his glass. Yes. A pause. Then, a knock at the door. A messenger. A single envelope. Sealed in red wax. Graves stared at it for a long moment before finally breaking the seal. Inside, a single playing card. The King of Spades. And beneath it, scrawled in elegant ink, you always were predictable, Graves. I'll be seeing you soon. No signature. None was needed. Lucien Thorne had returned. Graves exhaled. Then, he smiled. Well. I suppose the game isn't over after all.
Every mystery leaves a mark. And the next case is already unfolding. If you enjoyed the story, subscribe, like, and share. There are more secrets waiting to be uncovered. Join us in the next chapter of A Study in Secrets.